So Lance Stroll is back at Aston Martin this weekend. Of course, he had to withdraw from the Spanish Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago because of what he described as unbearable pain in his wrist. Since then, he's had an operation, and apparently he's also completed some testing laps. I think it was at Circuit Paul Ricard in France, the former home of the French Grand Prix. He did that in an old Formula 1 car just to test how his wrist felt and make sure that he's okay. But a lot of people, including myself, are pretty doubtful about all this. It seems like a very quick turnaround to come back into Formula 1 after such a serious flare-up with his wrist. He wouldn't have withdrawn from the race in Spain if it was actually possible for him to compete. It must have been really bad, but he is back. The team is adamant that he's fine and healthy enough to compete. But let's have a look at this guy's full article on the F1Chronicle.com, because interestingly, Lance Stroll is being a bit avoidant when it comes to questions about the details of his injury. Lance Stroll will take part in his home Grand Prix in Montreal this weekend after sitting out the Spanish Grand Prix, but don't expect many details on his recovery from the man himself. Speaking at Thursday's pre-race press conference, the Aston Martin driver kept comments brief and tone subdued, offering little insight into the right wrist injury that sidelined him at Barcelona 2 weeks ago. "It's just the old injury that I had with it a couple years ago," Stroll told reporters. "Just started to bug me again, and so just got it sorted." Anybody that saw the highlights of his press conference will know how monosyllabic, I don't know if that's the right term really, just how brief his answers were. He's always like this in press conferences, but I think in particular this one, he was really not trying to give much away. Tom Clarkson was asking him everything, trying to get some information out of him, but it just wasn't working. And that is his right, of course. If he doesn't want to tell people about it, that is his right as a person. That's his own personal injury, But yeah, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and I understand why. The 25-year-old had dropped out of the Spanish Grand Prix after qualifying, citing aggravation of a previous wrist injury that required surgery back in 2023. At the time, Aston Martin was left scrambling, unable to find a replacement in time. The team ran with only one car during the race weekend, as Fernando Alonso took a single point by finishing 10th. I mean, they weren't scrambling really, they couldn't find anybody in time because effectively no one else could compete for Aston Martin. Drugovich or Van Dorn or Bottas, none of them had run any sessions in the F1 car, so the stewards never would have allowed them to race. It's just a rule in Formula 1. So they weren't scrambling for someone to find. There was no point even looking. Asked whether he's confident the pain won't return, Stroll responded, "Pretty confident, should be good." He kept his right hand out of sight during the media session, answering questions with his left, and his demeanour more reserved than usual. That's an understatement. Often sitting slouched in his chair with his hands stuffed in his pockets. Pressed further on the nature of the treatment, he confirmed the pain had lingered over recent rounds. "It was bothering me for a few weeks over Imola, Monaco and then Barcelona. Was just really brutal throughout the weekend. I got the procedure done and drove this week at a test in France, and I was feeling pretty good, so I'm confident." He repeated the sentiment when asked again. "Like I said earlier, but I'll say it again. I was in pain for a couple races. Barcelona, I was in a lot of pain, so I got a procedure done. Now I'm not in pain." Still, Stroll did concede the wrist remained a little sore post-procedure and declined to elaborate on what exactly had been done. "I don't really want to get into detail about what I had to do and how I had to do it because it's my medical privacy and I like to keep that sort of stuff confidential," which of course is his right. His absence from Barcelona came after he was eliminated in the second round of Saturday qualifying. The decision to withdraw was announced so late that it left the team unable to make any contingency arrangements, adding to the confusion in the paddock about the situation's timeline. There are a lot of people who think there's a bit of a conspiracy around there. The fact that they didn't want Drugovich to come into the car, that they announced this so late because they didn't want Drugovich to go in the car and do better than Stroll and make him look bad, basically. And that is a conspiracy theory that I 100% can get on board with. We love conspiracy theories here on the channel, guys, and I think that's pretty credible, to be honest, but let me know what you think about it. But there were indications that tensions boiled over internally. Multiple sources told ESPN following his Q2 elimination, Stroll reacted angrily inside the garage, hurling objects and allegedly swearing at team personnel. Stroll didn't deny that when asked. "Yeah, I was frustrated for sure. Frustrated about my wrist in the last 3 races from Imola, and it was just inhibiting my driving," he said. "So I knew that Sunday was going to be tricky, probably impossible, and at that point I was pretty frustrated about it." I mean, we've seen Stroll lose his cool in the garage before. He kind of went for his fitness coach or something. Was it in Qatar a few years ago? I seem to remember that. That was not a particularly nice incident, really. But, you know, again, I'm not justifying it. I don't know what exactly he did. You know, don't go throwing objects like a toddler if that's what he did do. That's an allegation. That's unproven, of course. But, you know, I understand his frustration. If that's the case, it must have been incredibly painful to go through, and then to, you know, basically at that point, deep down, know that he wasn't going to be able to compete for the remainder of the weekend. That must have been very frustrating. So I understand his frustration, although throwing at his mechanics, throwing stuff, if he's done that, it's not great, is it? But that's unproven. We'll never know, of course. But guys, what do you think? Do you think Stroll is going to be able to compete in Canada and compete effectively? Again, I have my reservations. I will see it. The proof will be in the Canadian pudding, or the Canadian pancakes with maple syrup on it. Oh man, I'm getting hungry again now. Can you tell? But yeah, I have my doubts. I have my reservations. I've already covered in another video, which I will link at the end of this one if you're on YouTube. But yeah, your thoughts in the comments below are appreciated as always, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always to see much more content like this on the world of Formula 1. I will see you very soon, guys. Have a great day.